Hi guys, welcome back to our channel.
Hi.
We're the Wheezy Five. Dang it. One of these days we're going to get this right. Okay, we're not the Wheezy Five. We're actually only 3 of the Wheezies today.
So just do this.
The Wheezy 3. We're the Wheezy 3 today, and we have a very important topic that we want to talk to you about. What is it? What? Can you say it? Is it just...
Celiac disease.
We want to talk to you guys today about celiac disease. And why do we want to talk to them about celiac disease?
Because I have it.
Because Lorelai has celiac disease. And it's been a huge part of our lives. Like the biggest part, huh?
Yeah.
We want to talk to you guys today. We're going to let Lorelai leave soon because my hope here today is to share a little bit from a parent's point of view of what we dealt with when she was at her sickest, leading up to a diagnosis. And not only for people that have celiac disease, but also for moms if you have a child that's struggling with illness and you don't have a diagnosis yet. My hope is that today can give you maybe a little bit of hope and a little bit of insight into some decisions and maybe some pointers. What today is not is an education video on celiac disease, because the truth is you can Google all the information. I have a couple facts I want to give you, but you can Google and find out all the details about celiac disease. What I want to talk about more is our experience as a family. So, Lorelai, is life hard with celiac disease?
Very.
Is it hard? Do you still feel like it's really hard?
Sometimes.
What is hard for you?
Actually, one of the really hard parts is whenever you think something is gluten-free and then you accidentally buy it and then it isn't.
So when we go to the market, we think it's safe, and then maybe on the back there's a disclaimer that says, like, is that right?
Yes.
Like, we'll have this really yummy new thing and it will be labeled gluten-free, so you think it's safe, and then we'll get home and it'll say, like, it was made in a facility with wheat or something, and then she can't have it. Is that one of the hardest things?
Very disappointing.
Very disappointing. And what is something, is there anything else that, like, I don't know, that you find really hard? What about, like, at a party or something?
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that?
Like, whenever you're at a birthday party and they're like, you want cake? And I'm like, no, I don't want it. I can't eat.
So does it make you feel, what?
Sad.
Sad? Maybe a little bit left out sometimes?
Yeah.
I think as a parent, that's one of the hardest things for me, is that sometimes I do feel like it's isolating for her. But I also think you realize how healthy you are now, right?
Yes.
Yes. What is on you? You have a big fuzz.
know.
So what else do you want to say from a kid perspective? Say there was another kid watching this that has celiac disease. What would you want them to know? Hi.
I don't know.
What if they just found out yesterday that they have celiac disease? What would you want them to know the future looks like for them?
You're gonna feel a lot better.
So physically you're gonna feel a lot better. And what
In
else?
the beginning, I did not feel it.
No, you felt super bad.
But it's not all that bad, is it?
Living with it.
It is.
Is it? Okay, here's a good question. Lorelai, here's my question for you. What would you choose? Life when you were at your sickest, or life with some of the challenges that having the diagnosis bring into your life?
Now, because it's like a lot easier and I feel like a human.
You feel like a human and you're not sick all the time. All right, do you want to go play?
Sure.
Bye. Bye. Wave goodbye. I'm gonna stop this. Hi guys, now it's just us. You have got to relax and be yourself. Okay. All right guys, it's just us now. Just the parents. Okay, so I wrote down a couple talking points and things that I want to talk to you about, but I do have a couple facts about celiac disease that I'm gonna share with you. And obviously I don't want to bore you. So for those of you that don't know, celiac disease is not an allergy to wheat, number one. It's basically an autoimmune response to the protein found in wheat, which is called gluten. And that's why the person has to eat gluten-free that has celiac disease. It is the only way to treat celiac disease. There's nothing else out there. In fact, some places you can find, like, I think it's called like Gluten Buster or something like that. And I've actually seen in some of my like celiac mom groups that I'm in that they're like willing to try this stuff for their kid. That stuff doesn't work. It's all just a scam. It's all a lie. Maybe if you had like a gluten sensitivity, perhaps that would be a positive thing. But there is no other way to treat celiac disease than by not eating any gluten. Now, when we say not eating any gluten, it's not a matter of just like making sure you eat gluten-free bread. There can be zero cross-contamination. So that what that means is upon diagnosis, you have to get new everything. New pots, new pans, new silverware, new appliances. What else did we get new? Everything.
Pretty much everything.
You need a whole new kitchen. Now, for us, her celiac, she's very, very severe and very, very sensitive. She responds to topical lotions and creams that have wheat in them, which is very common. This video could go on for hours, but I don't really want to dive into all that. But all this to say, we have a completely gluten-free house. There is zero gluten in our kitchen. I am 100% gluten-free. Our oldest daughter, Riley, is 100% gluten-free. The boys are not. So
I eat the gluten.
when
Not in the house.
Maybe if we go out to dinner to a restaurant, very few restaurants or do we even trust going to, but if we do go to one of the restaurants we trust, the boys, Troy and Grayson, will get whatever they want off the menu. Grayson does have a couple gluten snacks in the house sometimes, and what we do is one of two things. He either keeps them in a backpack in his room, or we have them double bagged in the kitchen. If he eats gluten, he has to wash his hands immediately. So it's that serious. So moving forward from that, the stat that I just read, it was 1 in every 133 people, I believe, living in the United States has celiac disease. Most of them are undiagnosed. But I think the statistic now is 1 in every 100 people. So celiac disease is much more common than you realize. But what it also is extremely hard to diagnose. And that's what I want to talk to you guys about today. So we had, do you have anything you want to say?
I mean, you're doing such a good job. I don't want to take this from you at all.
Take my moment.
You're doing so good.
So Lorelai started to show symptoms of something when she was tiny. Baby. Maybe 6 months, I would say. Do you think?
Yeah.
I would say right around the time that she started eating solid food, we started to notice she had gastrointestinal issues, which is going to be the most common thing that you're going to hear from people with celiac disease, that they have stomach issues. However, get on your Googles and search symptoms of celiac disease. The list is endless. It's endless. So she started with a lot of allergy-like symptoms. If you get grossed out easily, you really shouldn't be watching this video, by the way. She was so mucusy. It's so disgusting. She was so mucusy all the time. She had snot pouring from her. She had to get tubes in her ears around 10 months because she was getting constant ear infections. Her nose was constantly running. She was swallowing mucus all the time. Her lungs were filled with mucus. She would cough and gag and it would come up. She would cough so much that she would vomit. She was either constipated or having horrible diarrhea all the time. It was always just something. So the doctors really poured into the mucus and the allergy-like symptoms, and they said asthma. It's got to be asthma. But there was so much, sorry, I keep saying the word mucus. There was so much mucus that they thought there was a chance that she had cystic fibrosis. So they actually sent us to a hospital 2 hours away, and they had to do what's called a sweat chloride test, because the only way, I guess, to diagnose, I believe it's the only way to diagnose cystic fibrosis is to do the sweat chloride test. So she was 1, she had just turned 1, and they had her all swaddled up in these hot blankets, and they had to be able to collect enough sweat to diagnose it. I knew she didn't have it. I felt very confident that she didn't. Of course, we were scared. She didn't have cystic fibrosis. So that was the first big thing ruled out. And then more gastrointestinal symptoms. I'm giving you the condensed version here. More gastrointestinal symptoms began, and there was a lot more vomiting. It was like the more she was eating, the more she was vomiting. And the more she was vomiting, the hungrier she was getting. And she would vomit, but then vomit up a meal, but then be hungry again. This is my 1-year-old. She'd be hungry again 10 minutes later. And it was just so confusing as a parents trying to navigate what that possibly could be.
I mean, this is several times a day too. So
yeah, it wasn't once or twice a month. This was daily,
several times a day,
all day, every day. It got to the point, moving into 1-year-old, 2-year-old, I did start doing some elimination diets just to try to find some kind of connection, something that was causing these problems. So then the next thing they thought was a pituitary tumor, because that can cause vomiting. So we were sent for, I feel like it was a CAT scan with dye. It could have been an MRI, but all this, I don't even think she was 2 yet. So she obviously couldn't lay still long enough, so they had to sedate her. During this fiasco, she ended up having some terrible breathing problems during the sedation part. And that was a whole catastrophe in and of itself. I'm not going to go into that, but it was very scary. We just kept ruling things out month by month. And when I look back on her charts, there were so many doctor's appointments, and it came to the point where people didn't really want her to come around. She wasn't really getting invited too much, because you imagine if you threw up multiple times every day and you were so constipated you couldn't go to the bathroom and you're miserable. Like, that's a miserable existence. Think like when you have a stomach bug for a couple days, what that's like. And people would come up to, I think this was like, as a mom, this was like the hardest thing. Like, people would say, because she was so miserable all the time, she cried all the time, and people would be like, I have no idea how you do it. I have no clue how you do it. And you're just like, that's your kid. Like, you have to do it because it's your child. She would vomit in her sleep and not wake up. There was a couple times when I'd go in the morning. She's right here in the room. I'd go in the morning and she'd be covered in vomit. But we have a doctor who we are looking to for guidance. And, you know, we're hearing she'll grow out of it. It's a phase. Have her eat smaller meals. Just constantly like to push you to the next appointment. Push you to the next appointment. And as a mom, you want to believe what you're hearing. You want to believe you're going to get through this. And we go in little ebbs and flows. Like, I feel like we'd have a couple weeks where we're like, oh, okay, we're doing okay. At one point we removed dairy completely. And we felt like there was, you know, it was a little bit better, which, if you know the science behind celiac disease, you know, if you stop dairy, you know why that's going to help a little bit. But it was just this constant roller coaster. And I very specifically remember an appointment that I went to. I'm going to try not to cry. And our physician, I took her in, and I'm exhausted and tired, I'm at my wit's end, and I want my child to be better. I just want her better. And the doctor, the physician, the nurse practitioner we saw, she told me that my daughter was very manipulative and she said that Lorelai was using her vomiting to control her parents. And I left that appointment and I believed her. And I remember I called a friend that I was very close to at the time, and I told her what she said. And I can't even believe that I spent a second believing this. I don't even think I called you first. I think I called her first. I knew she was the kind of person that's like straightforward with you. And I thought she's the one person that if that's true, she will tell me that that is true. And she said, Amy, get her out of there. Get her out of there and get her to somebody who can figure out what's wrong with her. And that was my light bulb moment, that I have been wasting my time. I have been wasting our money. I have been wasting precious health that Lorelai could have had. So we did. I got her out of there, and praise the Lord, we did. I'm going to skip a chunk of the story in the middle that's only just something that I don't know if I'm ready to share here. But we found an amazing gastroenterologist. I actually took her out of town, and I took her to an endocrinologist because Lorelai also has some thyroid issues. And this endocrinologist was amazing and said, you know, I'm definitely going to treat her thyroid, but we have to get her to a pediatric gastroenterologist, a specialist who can figure this out. And within a short period of time, Lorelai had had the proper blood work. She had had an endoscopy, because you have to have both an endoscopy and a biopsy, and you have to have blood work to diagnose celiac disease correctly. So it was a short period of time and life-changing. We were so educated by this new hospital. We understood cross-contamination. We understood exactly what we needed to do for her. She also was diagnosed with another illness that we didn't even know was going on. It's called EOE. I'm not going to try to pronunciate it, but if you want to look it up, EOE. And it's basically such a huge allergic reaction of the esophagus. All the eosinophils are gathering in the esophagus, and it causes it to constrict and contract. She was unable to swallow correctly. It was causing more vomiting, and her esophagus just looked like it had been scratched up with ulcers, and all that was going on. My baby was so sick, and yet we were being told that it was in our heads, or that it was her using controlling behavior. And what I want you to take from this today, I feel like I could talk for hours because there's so much more. But what I want you to know, what we want you to know, I think the most important part of this video is that you know that you have power. And if you feel like your child, or you, not just, or your spouse, or whoever it is, if you're fighting for answers, and you know in your gut, I say this all the time, I feel like the mom gut is so powerful and so intuitive. If you feel like there's something bigger going on, you have to fight for answers. Because I would convince myself, like, I feel like we'd talk each other out of it. Like, this is normal. like it became our normal. And I think we tried to really convince ourselves that it was normal, what we were going through. And the truth is, if you know that there is something wrong, you have to fight for those answers, as uncomfortable as it can be. And if it means leaving your physician and seeking out a new one and looking for second and third and fourth opinions, you have to seek it out, because I guarantee you your mama gut is right. And you know what? Worst case scenario, you're going to find out that it's not, and you're going to find out ways to help your child. I hope that made sense. So all of this to say, Lorelai is fantastic now. She's sitting right here. Hey, girl. Hi. So
she hasn't been sick for a long time.
She has not. I can't even think of the last. She struggled with a lot of things, especially when it came to just not, like, I don't know why this stands out to me so much, but riding her bike. She was so sick for so long. We would even go outside for her to ride her bike, and she didn't even have the energy to do it. And literally a month ago, she hopped on her bike and the training wheels came off and she just took off. Like, those little milestones I feel like we missed because she just spent 5 years? Really 5 solid years just being miserable. And we did everything we could, and we did everything we were told to do as parents, but we just didn't seek out answers hard enough. And I think it was just because I was scared. I was scared to go a different route, and I would, you know, you're being told one thing and you feel like you're just supposed to do that one thing. And you don't have to. You don't have to. But she's doing so good now. She's so happy and healthy, and she has boundless energy. And now that we live in Florida, and all of our friends never knew her before this, and it's so funny because we tell them how hard her little life was, and I don't think anybody would ever believe it because her spirit, she's just so, she has more zest for life than most.
True.
So anyway, I hope you got something from this. This was something that we just wanted to share with you. I'm not a doctor. This is just my experience. If any of my terminology was wrong, I do apologize. I did my best to share accurate information and accurate terminology, but sometimes in my emotions I get talking and who knows. But anyways, guys, I hope you received something from this. Please, here's Lorelai. Come on over, girl. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a share. Wheezy 5. Wheezy 5. Ready? Wheezy.
Right.
Wheezy 5. We're the Wheezy 5. Okay, there's only 3 of us, but there are 5 of us.
Then we just
Bye,
do
guys.
this.
There you
Just do